The 13th of September 2023. I'm doing work and doing all sorts of stuff, so I'm not dressed for any fancy occasion. But there's something I've just saw in the paper that irks me a bit, and I'd like to set that record straight. It's in the Irish Examiner, and I think it's also in the Mail on Sunday. It may have been in the media. The Tainaiste, that means the Irish Deputy Prime Minister, Michealle Martin, who's from Cork, has been going on about the shame on us for failure to bring the murderer of Joseph DePlantier, the French woman who came to live in Scollin, County Cork, and was beaten to death in 1996, the failure to bring him to justice, the person who did it to justice. I'm not assuming any gender for the killer, but the nature of the beating would indicate a strong man, all right. Now, I can't say that. Now, she was found dead near her home. Now, Michealle Martin makes the point that the suspect, who he says is Ian Bailey, who died last year, he was an English journalist that came to live there, should have been put on trial with a judge and jury. At least that should have happened. Now, let's look at some of the facts about this. I made 2 videos about it before, but the membership of my channel, the number of subscribers, has increased a lot since. So a lot of you viewers may never have heard this before. I'll go back on it. There was one state pathologist at that time in the Republic of Ireland, Dr John Harbison. You can Google him there. He died about 2 years ago. He suffered from mental decline for about 3 years before his death. But he was perfectly all right at the time of the murder, and for quite a while afterwards. He retired, I'd say about 2004, maybe around that. Don't hold me to that, please. He lived up around Malahide, and he was married and had children. He was a Welshman by birth, but I think he had a drop of Irish in him, and he had quite a professional accent. He wore a beard, and he had always something to say. Now, I happen to know him, and I am the only person on the planet of 8 billion people that can knock Mr. Martin for the lies he is telling. For that is what he is telling. He was a member of Fianna Fáil at the time. He was a TD, if not actually some type of a minister. Right? Now, the murder happened in 96, and I would say that from around 86, about 10 years before, Dr Harbison, whose duty it was to act as a pathologist. Now, acting as a pathologist is a gruesome type of a job to some people, not to me and not to Dr Harbison. Many of the Gardaí felt anyone that could cut up a body, there must be something wrong with him. This is the perverse, gross, sickening, amateurish attitude of the guards, and only those who thought like that had a hope of getting promoted. Okay? Now, it also happened that a few years before that, the murder squad were on the go, and they weren't fit to investigate the Kerry baby's case. Joanna Hayes told them she had a baby and left it out in the field, and they never brought her out. This was highly criticised by the judge in the inquiry after. Now, at the time, the law was that if a person was being held in the Garda station under the Criminal Justice Act 1984 for questioning, there was no provision to bring her outside the station. There is now. So Mr. Martin could have made legislation right away when he made the act, and could have been involved, or he could have made some suggestion that there would be provision to bring the person out to view the scene. The dope hadn't the brains or the capacity or anything else to do it. All he's good for is roar and bring in more migrants, woke left-wing ideology, and the muggos and Fianna Fáil, the TDs, can't wait to elect him and keep him in there, and all the damage he's doing. I have no time for him at all. But the thing about it is, he's from Cork, by the way, too. That's why he's talking about it. The thing about it is, the murder squad was a bit of a riotous crowd. They were drinking like fish. And you see, they'd have to go down maybe to a town, maybe way down the country. There'd be very little, they'd live in the local hotel, and there was very little to do once the whole day's work was over, only go drinking. And it was a disaster for any young person, man or woman, who got in with them, because you're expected to drink and buy them drink and everything else. And a lot of their behaviour, some of their behaviour wasn't just that good in many ways, but they fell foul of the Joanne Hayes case, the Kerry Babies case, and that didn't make matter a damn. They only laughed at the inquiry. Not everyone would get in on these things either. It was privileged, and they had great pay and great conditions out of it. Although there was some good people in it, there was one or two eccentric detectives and detective inspectors who were quite good at what they're at, but you couldn't talk to them. They'd be drinking night, noon and morning. There was a few of them then, wasn't too bad, it has to be said. They were a mixed bag, by the way, and most of them are dead now anyway, so it doesn't matter. But Larry Wren disbanded them. The Commissioner Larry Wren disbanded them during a Fine Gael government. It was Fine Gael was in. And he never made any proper replacement. He said the local superintendent was quite adequate to investigate a murder. They're trained to do the courses, to do everything, they can do it. Well, that was baloney. Most superintendents knew how to raid a public house and take names inside. Most knew how to present a case of maybe drunken driving in court. Most knew maybe how to prosecute a young lad for stealing petrol out of a car or something like that. They weren't very bright in other ways. They'd have some wee bit of passed a few exams. But when it came to the difficulties of a murder, some hadn't a clue. And one of the things about the old murder squad was that they were very particular about who got in to see the body. They'd immediately ring up and tell the local superintendent, put one guard there with a book, let in the priest and note how he goes in, let in the doctor to pronounce the body dead, note how they went in and make sure they come out the same way, and make a note and get them to initial the time they went in and out, so there was no doubt. Letting them in there was a bit of a contamination. After that, nobody got in until the pathologist came on the scene. After the pathologist came, an undertaker was hired to take the body to the mortuary, the local mortuary, could be in the hospital or whatever. So that was the situation, right? But Larry Wren threw the whole lot out, and of course the local super come plodding in, and he went walking in and he ploughed in. There was actually no need for the local officers to go in near the body at all. When they arrived on the scene, the guard that'd be there would say, the body's just in behind that tree, sir, and he'd say, right, get your book out, get your pen, get the priest, get the doctor, have the doctor pronounce him dead. The moment the doctor pronounces the body dead, you have a murder, you have a suspected murder anyway, and the priest has to be allowed in to render the bit of, the bit of religious last rites or whatever you call it. So the point about it is that that's all. That's the way. And once that's put before a court, the judge will accept. That's it. But sometimes there'd be people traipsing in and out, and the journalist to come out from the local paper. How are you, Paddy? Oh, you have a murder. I'll get a picture. I shall go on in, and they'd plough in, and they'd leave bits of their clothes on the briars and everything else. Most of these superintendents were donkeys. They weren't fit to be guards, not to talk of, or policemen. Some of them were immensely ignorant and immensely bigoted and immensely biased, and they were a disaster for anyone to have to work under them. They were tight, mean old devils, and they kept all the money and wouldn't spend the money that was allocated to them for investigations and everything. And some of them wouldn't let the guards leave their own district. If somebody did a serious crime, like robbing a filling station and hitting the man there, and the person from it was from somewhere else, let's say if it was in Cork, over in Kerry, they wouldn't let them leave their district. This is the kind of mishmash rule that was in it. There was a commissioner employed in Dublin, and he was as useful as the teats, the mammary glands on my bull, and he ran a corrupt show, and it's still no better. Some of the superintendents, the local guards, had to get them away on holidays to inspect places for drugs and everything. They generally weren't into supplying drugs, but they'd be friendly with the people, or maybe playing golf. They'd be playing golf, and they'd be friendly with them, and they could see no wrong in them, when in fact they'd be doing drugs on their pub and everything to make money. In any event, I paint a pretty bleak picture. It wasn't totally like that, but I'm available for debate, of course. I never back away from that. Dr. John Harbison was the only pathologist, and he had been begging the Irish government, of which Michealle Martin was a part of, for an assistant. All he wanted was an assistant. Why? He lived in his house, and he had to attend courts, which might take up maybe 22 days a year. He had to pack away his stuff and account of it and have it right and have it in a fridge, and his samples and have them properly marked, and he had to make his notes because that was vitally important. Any slip up is easy to make. He had to be very thorough, and then he had to make all that. The next thing, there could go a week, there might be nothing. So he could go out and do his gardening. He was not a drinker. I think he took a glass of wine or a drop of port if there was a party or something. He wasn't a total teetotaler, but he wasn't much of a drinker anyway. He was highly educated. He studied in England. He studied pathology, and he really did love the job. And when he'd be lecturing to the Gardaí, he did take a bit of a delight about showing them photographs, gruesome photographs and all that, and trying to turn their stomach. He thought that was a bit funny, and I thought it funny as well. Bloody Aegis, that was their bloody job. The hell with them. But in any event, he was begging the Minister for Justice for an assistant. And the reason was that if a murder happened tonight and he wasn't around, who was to go to the murder? Now, if he was leaving the country on holidays or something, he had to tell the Department of Justice, I'm leaving, and they would appoint somebody to do it when in his absence. But if he wasn't leaving the country and he got a call tonight, they expected him to down tools and drive all the way from Howth in Dublin to Cork, to Schull. He had no driver, he had no facilities, he had no place to leave his samples, everything was done from home, and he was sick of it. And he may have attended the scene of, I would say, 12 murders per year. That's a guess, might be 10. Yeah. And then half of them would result in a prosecution, and maybe 3/4. So that of that 12 murders, there could be maybe 10 days, there could be 120 days in court and all of that. You get the point. So he attended the scene, and he did great work in all of them, but none of it was appreciated. But as he got older, he began to realise that he was the only one on call when he was in the country. So he could be going to bed at night, he could be tired, he'd be cuddling up in the bed, electric blanket on, and maybe reading a book. When he got a call, you have to go to West Cork. And that wasn't an easy job, but he accepted that all right. On the night of the murder, I understand he had children, and one of them had a bit of a party, did well in her exams or his exams or whatever it was, and there was a wee bit of a party with a few people around and a wee bit of finger food and a bit of a meal, and I think he may have had a few bevies, and if I was in this place, so would I. But the next thing, at about 11 o'clock at night, he got the call he was needed in Schull. There was a murder. And he wasn't in a position to drive. There was nobody to drive him. If he had had a driver, he would be grand, he'd go down, the drink wouldn't matter. But he put it to the next morning, and he was for years and years begging Michealle Martin, dirty old Egypt, that's all he is, begging him, and begging the government, and begging Charlie Haughey, and begging Gareth Fitzgerald, and all of them bloody idiots that I'm down on them so hard, they don't like me, and I get YouTube probably banned me now for saying that, begging them, would you give me an assistant? Now, he didn't need an assistant to do a full autopsy. He needed an assistant to get there quick and take all the temperatures. And with a dead body, you need to get the temperature in certain ways very fast. The temperature decreases depending on the ambient temperature outside. That means the outside temperature. And I think this was fairly cold time. So you need to get there and establish the time of death. That service was not available. Now, someone posted on a video I made before about this, because I feel a duty to honour John Harbison's name. He was a great man, and there's no one to speak for him, as this other fella waxes lyrical in criticism of the whole thing. He may not be altogether criticising John Harbison, but he's criticising the actions that were taken. But we look at his part in it. He denied the state pathologist, or his government did, the services of an assistant. Any medically trained, any doctor, any girl doctor or man doctor or anything would do it. Now, the point was made before that any doctor could have done this. I'm not so sure. You'll be expecting the local doctor down in the surgery that's giving cough bottles to people and all of that to go out and do this. And it involves moving the body and things like that. So I don't altogether agree with that. And then if you have a local doctor doing that, there's issues with his evidence in court and how well he gives the evidence. There's all sorts of problems. Local doctors, it can be very hard to get them to give a statement of what they found or anything else. So you can argue that, and I've no doubt that's going to be posted underneath with people who love. They love a lot of my voters. People, funny enough, absolutely love Fianna Fáil. All the woke left, they think they're beautiful. They think they see a Fianna Fáil politician. They see a halo, like the Virgin Mary round them, or the Christ. I mean, that's the level, for those who don't live in Ireland, that's the level of adoration that exists in Ireland for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and a kind of way for Sinn Féin. And among the extreme hard left, you have people before puberty, and you have all these Richard Boyle Carrot and Paul Murphy and all these ones. They all have halos around them. The Irish have an inferiority complex of a severe kind, not them all. I don't think it's too bad with me, but some of them have, and they just adore these people. When they come into the community or down to some event, oh, hello, how are you? And they're shaking the man. Oh, you did so well. Oh, you're a minister. And they wet themselves with excitement. That's the kind of some of the Irish. But anyway, he refused. He and his government, whoever it was, the Minister for Justice at the time, refused to give John Harbison an assistant. And so the one time in a lifetime came up that John Harbison couldn't go. And when he headed out the next morning, bright and early, in his own car, he was getting expenses. He had no Garda driver or anything else. The Garda drivers were busy driving out silly ministers round to silly events. And they were getting 2/3 of the overtime of the whole force at one time, the minister's drivers. You couldn't make this up. This is Ireland for you. I'm only documenting what they were doing. In any event, he went down, and when he put the thermometer, or whatever they do, I don't think you need me to itemise or to state how it's done. When he done the thermometer thing, the body was too cold. There was no residual temperature. So he couldn't say the time of death. So if he had to be able to say the time of death, that would have meant that when everyone and the suspects were being checked, their movements would be vital. So if we say that Ian Bailey was the culprit, and he could say he was having a pint at 10:30 that night, and I had a quiet pint, there was nothing happened, I saw, which would be a normal alibi stud. If you could show that she died at 10:15, he'd be unlikely to get himself cleaned up in that time. But if you could show he killed her at 7:45, well, then you would have to say that could have been an alibi. And you might ask the question, how often did he go in there? He may have never went into that pub before, to get me a point. So you could build up a picture. But this was a fatal mistake, and this was caused by successive Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael government who refused, I always spell this word, refused, refused for no good reason to give Dr. Harbison a part-time assistant. There was nobody he could say, hello, Julia or Tommy, I'm going to have a little bit of a party tonight. My son has done well in his exams, or my daughter has passed her exams, or she's had her engagement. I'll be having a few little bevies and a little bit of food, and if I'm needed in the morning, I'll be available at 6 o'clock. Will you be on call to look after anything that happens? And when he got the call, he could ring them and say, will you head off down? And they could head off down and do that basic stuff. Get the body, get the temperature and the time of death established, note a few things, make a few notes, and then let the guards photograph and get the body. Could have been removed, or the body could have been left there till Dr. Harbison got down the next morning bright and early and made his observations and all of the rest. Usually the body would be removed once it was looked at by any medical person. Now, do you understand that? Michealle Martin has some cheek. He has some damn corrupt, two-faced cheek. He has some hypocrisy to pour scorn on the investigation of the DePlantier murder when he refused to do the basics. Oh, we can't afford it. Oh, we have an economic downturn. Oh. And them forking money out hand over fist to their friends and everybody else. That's the truth. The cheek of him, the bloody cheek of him, to come along and say that. And he knows Dr. Harbison is dead, and there's nobody to defend the name of Dr. John Harbison except one old farmer from rural Ireland with cows. Nobody else. I feel the need to defend him because he was one very straight, decent man, and I knew him, and he liked me an awful lot, and I enjoyed him. What a crowd of old creeps they are, the whole damn lot of them. Let's put the record straight. Go to hell. How dare you? How can you have a jury trial if you can't even establish the cause of death? And you can't establish the cause of death because you refused. And your old Fianna Fáil rascals and I think old Haughey was he in it on the go at the time, but a lot of these politicians were still there. I'll not go into them at the moment, we can look at them again, but he was knocking around. He's an established politician. All he had to do was make a provision for it. Now, Whitehall Garda Station is their headquarters, a big, big building. I understand you have the main pathologist, and I think you have 2 or if not 3 other pathologists assisting, all with state cars and everything. And I believe that they eventually were shamed into doing this. But why did they have to be shamed? Why could they not respond and look at the pleas of the man to them? He wrote letters, he rang them, he done many things. And I believe the reason was they didn't like him because he had an English accent. He didn't lick them. He wasn't out playing golf with them. That's what I think happened. He called a spade, and further, they felt that he was gruesome. But that was his job. A pathologist who doesn't examine the body is negligent. Folks, comment underneath. I know there's 1 or 2 who will say a local doctor could have done it. I don't agree. A local doctor is not cut out for that job at all. This is a murder investigation. This is an investigation which could have given Bailey or somebody else, if they were convicted, life imprisonment. A judge wants to have it done right, and I have no problem with the judges doing murder trials. They don't really mess about. They try to do it right because it's very serious stuff, and they'll try and get it right. But if the cases are not presented to them properly, what can they do? The DPP couldn't prosecute anybody. But there was an issue regarding the investigation teams as well. There was 2 teams on the job. There was neither head nor tail on it. And that was because the previous commissioner, Larry Wren, had decided to abolish the murder squad. And whatever about the murder squad, and all the drinking and smoking and messing about, they were fairly professional. They knew the tricks of the trade. By and large, there were exceptions, but they got that one right fairly good. Well, folks, I hope I've set the record straight. Got to be good to John Harbison. I hope that somebody, that's me, has defended the man and told the truth about it. Comment underneath, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We'll see you back soon for something else. Thank you.